Hi, in this video, I'm going to talk about linear equation. So let's get started. So linear equation is one of the type of equations you're going to come across in mathematics. And I'm going to start with the rules behind dealing with linear equations. So here's an example of a linear equation. If you have something like 2x minus 5 equal to 9, this is a linear equation. And in a linear equation, typically you expect to look for an unknown value. That is, you expect to look for the variable. In this case, the variable is x. So, but then we need to specify certain rules about linear equation or equation in general. If you have a equal to b, anything you add to a, if you add c to a, is the same thing as adding c to b. So this is one of the rules of equation. If you add something on the left hand side, you can add that same thing on the right hand side and the two sides will be equal. And note that what makes an equation is because it has this equality sign. So an equation is made up of something on the left, something on the right, and an equal sign connecting them. So let's talk about another rule. So this is the first rule. So the second rule is if you multiply a constant, let's say c, to the left side, you must multiply that c to the right side. So which means if I have a equal to b, if I multiply c to a, it must be equal to multiplying c to b. So the third rule is if you subtract, so if you do the subtraction, you get the same result. And if you divide, you get the same result. So then it goes beyond this. The fifth one, which is a general rule, is if you apply any function to A, is the same thing as applying any function to B. As long as you say A is equal to B, this also stands true. So let me be more specific about this function. So let's say I decide to apply a sine function. So I say sine A. It will be the same thing as sine B. And if I say something like, let's say log of A, then it will be the same thing as log of B, as long as you have stated that B is equal to A is equal to B. So these are the rules covering linear equation. So let's use that principle to solve for this very answer. Now the rule says I can do what I do on the left, I do on the right. So if I want to cancel out this minus 5 on the left, I can add 5 to both sides. In other words, I can say something like this: 2x minus 5 plus 5 on this side. Then I can say 9 plus 5. So in other words, since these two sides are the same, if I add plus 5 here, I'm supposed to add plus 5 here. And by adding plus 5 here, it will cancel out this because minus 5 plus 5 will give you 0. Then you have 2x equals 14. Then the rule also says that if you divide both sides by, if you divide anything here by anything, you do the same thing here. So which means if I divide this 2x by 2, I must divide 14 by 2, and that gives me 7. Therefore, x equals 7. So I'm just trying to make you understand that the whole idea of the linear equation is to determine a particular variable, and to determine that variable, you follow these rules, which is if you add something on the left, you add that same thing on the right. If you divide on the left, you divide on the right. If you multiply on the left, you multiply on the right. So that is what this linear equation rules is all about. So let's use this principle to answer more questions. So let's say we have a question like this: 2 into brackets 1 minus 3x then plus 7x equals 5 minus 2x. So let's say we want to solve for the value of x here. So how do we go about it? So the first one we do here is to expand. Whenever you have equation like this, the first step is to make sure that there is no bracket. You want to get rid of all the brackets. So now let's multiply this out. So this gives you 2 times 1, that gives you 2. 2 times minus 3x, that will give you minus 6x. Then plus 7x equals 5 minus 2x. So the next thing is to collect like terms, but collecting like terms also involves applying the rule of equation. So what collecting like terms means is all the x should be taken to the left, and all the constants to be taken to the right. So this means this will remain, this will remain, this should go to this place, and this should go to this place. Now, as a general rule, instead of adding to both sides or multiplying to both sides, the quickest way you can solve this is just to know that whenever you transfer from one side to the other side, just change the sign. So that's the quickest way to solve the equation instead of adding to both sides or subtracting from both sides, which will take you a longer time. So what I mean by that is you just take this minus 6, then this plus 7x. Since they are going to remain here, you write them like this. Then this is the sign of this 2x. So you take this minus 2x to this side. But once it crosses to the other side, the sign changes to plus 2x. Then this one is going to this side. Our 5 still remains, right? Then this is 2. Whenever you don't see any sign in front, it means positive. It means there's an invisible positive sign. So now you want to take to the other side. The sign changes from plus 2 to minus 2. So now you want to add everything up. So if you add up all of this, since they are like terms, that is, they have exactly the same coefficients, you just manipulate their coefficients. They have the same variable, so you just add up or subtract their coefficients. So minus 6 plus 7, that will give us plus 1. Plus 1 plus 2, that gives 3x, which is equal to 5 minus 2, that gives 3. So now how do you get x? You just say x equals, just take this to this side, just divide both sides by 3. In other words, just do something like this, and that will give you x equals 1. 3 in 3 is 1. So that is how you solve for linear equations. So linear equations come in various forms. You could have fractions and all of that, but at the end of the day, the goal is to isolate all the variables to the left, take all the constant to the right, and try to simplify and eventually solve for the value of the unknown variable. So I'm going to take some examples from past questions. This time around, I'm going to solve word problems. I'm going to look at word problems that lead to linear equation, and we'll go through those problems together. So let's look at past question on linear equation. So let's solve a question from Jamb past question year 2003, question number 11. So the question goes as follows. A cinema hall contains a certain number of people. If 22.5% are children, 47.5% men, and 84 are women, find the number of men in the hall. So this is a question that is a word problem, but you're expected to solve for the number of to determine the number of men. So let me just give you a guideline on how to deal with word problems in general. The first thing you want to do is to understand the problem. So that's the first thing. It's not something you want to solve abstractly. You want to understand what the problem is all about. What is it all about? So try to understand it from a plain or from a layman perspective. So now you have a hall, a cinema hall. It contains a certain number of people. Now, when they say certain number of people, it means you don't know the number of people. You don't know what that certain number means. So whenever you hear the word certain number, it means an unknown value, which you can call a variable in algebra. And since you can call it a variable, you can represent it with a symbol. So we can say let the number of people in the cinema be equal to y. So you are saying we don't know the number of people in the cinema hall, but let it be y. So now you've gotten a good picture of what's happening now. It's okay, there's this y number of people in this cinema hall. So let's read on. In that cinema hall, we have three categories of people. We have children, we have men, and we have women. So in this case, we are assuming that those men and women, they are adults. Then the children, whether male or female, they constitute a group. So now there are three groups of people in that hall: the children, the men, and the women. But let's ask, how many children do we have? For the children, the question says we have 22.5% of what? Whenever you hear the word percent, it's a percentage of something. But now, what is that something? Is that something is the number of people in the hall. So if I say, oh, there are 10% of children in this hall, what I'm just telling you is there are 10% of the total number is what we have in this hall. So let's say I have 100 people in a particular hall, and I say there are 10% of children. What I mean by that is 10% of that 100 constitute the children. So which means 10% of the total number of people. So now, when you see percentage, is a percentage of something, and in this case, it's a percentage of the total number of people in the hall. So which means the number of children there is 22.5% of Y. And you can write it in a better way as follows in fraction. You have to convert percentage to fraction before you can do any computation. So you can write it in fraction as 22 and a half. If you take this as improper fraction, you will get 2 times 22. That will give you 44 plus 1. That's 45 over 2% of Y. So let's convert our percent into fraction. So you just divide by 100, right? So that means you have 25 over 2 times 1 over 100. If you want to remove the percentage times y of y. So that can be written as 45 over 200 over 45y over 200. You can simplify further by dividing both sides by 5 if you want to. So which will give you 9 over 40, 9y over 40. So this is the number of children. So what about the number of men? For the number of men, you do the same thing. So for men is 47 and a half. So 47 and a half percent of y. Now you can write it as improper fraction as this 49, this 47 times 2. That will give you 94 plus 1. So that's 95 over 2. Then since it's in percentage, you multiply, but you divide by 100, then times y. Eventually, this will give you, if you divide by 5, so eventually this will give you 1, then you have 19 over 40y. So now this is the number of men. Now for the women, we know the exact number, that's 84. So the question now is, we should look for the number of men. So let's just break this down. So we know that the children, so the children plus the men plus the women must give you the total number of people in the hall, which is y. So what do we have as the number of children? We have 9y over 40. Men, we have 19y over 40. Then for the women, we have 84, and everything is equal to y. So now we've created a linear equation out of this word problem. So all you just need to do, just flow with the question, then try to piece everything together. We've interpreted the number of children, we've interpreted the number of men, we know that the number of women is 84. But then, if you add everybody together, you should know it will give you back everybody, because now all together we have y. So all you just need to do is to piece the whole thing together to get the total number of people, and that's this. So the next phase now is just to solve for the value of y. So what do? You just collect like terms. So you just take 9. You can add this up. So if you to simplify this region, so you can just take, since they have the same denominator, you just take 40. So this becomes 9y plus 19y. Note that if they don't have the same denominator, you will need to look for the LCM. So this is plus 84 equals y. And then the next thing you do is to add them up, and that will give you 28y over 40 plus 84 equals y. So you take this y to this side, that gives you 28y over 40 minus y equals minus 84. So you can do the rest of the math. So here you can just take the LCM. So this is over 1, and that will give you 40. So this will give you 40 in 40. That's 1 times 28y. That will give you this. 1 in 40 is 40 times y. That's minus 40 equals minus 84. So let's continue this. So the next phase is to simplify what we have at the top, and that will give you 48y minus 40 will give us minus 12y over 40. That's equal to minus 84. So you cross multiply to get rid of this denominator. So you just cross multiply. That's minus 12y equals 40 minus 40 times 84. Now you have y equals, just divide both sides by minus 12. That becomes minus 40 times 84 divided by minus 12. So then, you can cancel out the minus. Then you just divide this by 4. That will give you 3. This will give you 10. Then 3 in 84. So 3 in 8. That will give you 2. Remember, 2 in 24. That's 8. So then your y becomes 280. So we can say clearly that the total number of people in the cinema is 280. But then, how many men do we have there? Because the question is asking us the total number of men. We know the total number of men to be 19y over 40. So since men is 19 times y, so y is 280 over 40. So you just do this division, and that's 19 times 7, and that will give you have 3, then you have 133. So the correct answer is option B, which is 133. So let's take a look at another question. Let's take a look at another question from SSC past question. That's why past question year 2010, question 14. So let's get to it. So the question is, the sum of 6 and 1/3 of x is 1 more than twice x. Find x. Okay, so let's just break down this problem. Whenever you see word problem, don't get intimidated. Just interpret them literally and try to express them as you interpret them. So the question says the sum of x, the sum of 6. So you have sum. Sum means plus, right? So the sum of 6, that is 6 plus something, right? So let's interpret that something. The sum of 6 and 1/3. So 1/3 is 1 over 3. 1/3 of is times in math, right? So 1/3 of x. So 1/3 of x. So that's 1/3 times x, right? The sum of 6 and 1/3 of x. So in other words, you can say the sum of 6 and x over 3. That's the meaning of what that grammar is saying, right? It said that 6 plus 1/3 of x is, whenever you hear the word is, that can be replaced with equal to. So whenever I say something is another thing, it's more or less like saying that something is equal to the next statement. So 6 and the sum of 6 and 1/3 of x, which is this, is, you can say equal to, right? Is equal to, that is 1 more than x. So what is the meaning of 1 more than x? So 1 more than twice of x. So if I say something is 1 more, 1 more is like 1 plus, like 1 in addition to the next thing you want to say. 1 more than what? Twice x. So twice x is 2 times x. So this is how you convert this whole statement into a linear equation. And now the question is find x. So let's look for the value of x. So to look for the value of x, one way you can easily simplify this is whenever you see a fraction, try to deal with fraction quickly if you can. So in this case, there's only one fraction. I can just multiply all through by 3 to cancel out this fraction. And the rule says anything multiply on the left, you multiply on the right, right? So since I want to get rid of this 3, I can just multiply all through by 3. So I can just say 3 times 6 plus x over 3 equals 3 times 1 plus 2x. So if I expand this, I'm going to get 18 plus 3 times x over 3. Then this is 3 plus 6x. So this 3 cancels out 3. So you are left 18 plus x equals 3 plus 6x. Then the next thing is to collect like terms. You can take this x to this side or you take it to this side, but it all depends on what is more convenient to you. I generally prefer taking the unknown to the left. So here we have x, then you take this plus 6x to this side becomes minus 6x. Then this 18, when you take to this side, becomes, when there's no sign, it means plus. So when you transfer to this side, it becomes minus 18. So now x minus 6x is more or less like saying plus 1 minus 6. So if you can solve plus 1, there's an invisible 1 here. So plus 1 minus 6 will give you minus 5. So that becomes minus 5x equals, if you try to solve this, plus 3 minus 18. So you just take this out of this, then it becomes minus 15. So the next thing you want to do is to divide both side by minus 5 to cancel out this minus 5. So x becomes minus 15 over minus 5. And eventually you have 3. So x equals 3. So the answer is, the correct option is option C. So let's solve one more question. Okay, let's solve this question. That's from WIEC past question year 2021 and question number 48. So the question says a man will be x plus 10 years old in 8 years time. If 2 years ago he was 63 years, find the value of x. So how do you interpret this problem? So the major problem challenge is interpretation. So how do you actually convert this problem into mathematical symbol? So let's look at it this way. A man will be x plus 10 years old in 8 years time. Just try to express it the way they just said it. So that means in 8 years time, in 8 years time, the man will be x plus 10. Now they now said if 2 years ago he was 63 years, so 2 years ago he was 63 years. So the question is find the value of x. So if you are confused, the first thing I want to do is what is the common theme here? What is going on here? What is the common issue here? The common issue here is the man's age. That's what you can deduce from here. The first statement is talking about the man's age, 8 years in 8 years time. The second one is telling us 2 years ago, the man's age is 63. But the question is we should look for the value of x. So how do you come up with an equation that connects all this information? So to do that, look for something that is common, which is the man's age. So now let's represent these two information in terms of the man's age right now. So if I say what will be the present age of the man, the present age based on the first information, the present age, because the question is in 8 years time. That is, if we add 8 years to his present age, we are going to get, so let's say his present age is A, right? So let's say A is his present age. So what the first statement is saying is, if we take his present age, in 8 years time, you add 8 to it, you are going to get x plus 10, right? Which means his present age is, in terms of x plus 10, will be x plus 10 minus 8. So that will be his present age. In other words, to get since 80 in 8 years time, it will be x plus 10. It means his present age is when you subtract 8 from it because you have added 8 to his age. So that means his present age is x plus 2. Now let's look at the second information. The second information is 2 years ago. That means 2 years ago. What is 2 years ago? It means his age minus 2. That's 2 years ago. We are told that 2 years ago, this is age is equal to 63. So which means we can clearly say that his present age is 63 plus 2. That is, if you take this to this side, 63 plus 2, right? That means his present age is 65. So now that we've found a way to represent his present age with the two information. So his present age with the first information is x plus 2. His present age with the second information is 65. So how do we get x? We can get x since we have this present age in terms of this and this. And they definitely will be equal because if the man's present age is x plus 2 and his present age is 65, definitely these two terms are the same. So all you just simply do is equate the two representation of his age and you'll be fine. So it means his present age is x plus 2 and is also equal to 65. Then you are done with this. Just take x plus 2 equals 65. Then you solve for x. Just take this 2 to the side. That gives you 65 minus 2 and that gives you 63. So that is how you interpret this kind of problem and that makes option B the right option. So we are done talking about what problems involving linear equation. In our next video, we are going to talk about quadratic equation.